I don't even know where to start because I'm just so excited that a whole bunch of Cosmere stuff was happening. The last book in the Year of Sanderson, obviously, has just come out. I guess, unlike Yumi, I can give some non-spoiler thoughts before I dive right into it, actually try to be a legit booktuber. The Sunlit Man is a character that we have seen before, and he tells you outright later in the book, but there are plenty of clues to pick it up by chapter 5 or 6, if you've been paying close attention to the rest of the Cosmere. We have a planet that is a very small planet. You can circumnavigate the whole thing in under 4 hours, but you don't want to do that because the day is 10 hours long and the sunlight is deadly. And that plays into what our main character has to deal with. There's a lot of challenges related to the investiture on this planet, and the burning sunlight, and the man who has set himself up as king of everything. We're going to go ahead and dive in because I have so many thoughts on all of the Cosmere stuff that happens in this book. We're going to get into spoilers in 3, 2, 1, let's jam. When Nomad is talking to himself, he is saying that he doesn't have enough investiture to skip off of this planet. And he's referring to this as BEUs, which I was like, BEUs, what could that stand for? We only have one other system of investiture in the Cosmere that is actually quantified. It is breaths. It's breath equivalent units. It makes total sense that that's what would be used for quantifying other investiture in the Cosmere. You make it equivalent to breaths because that's the only thing that you can really keep track of. But when he shows up on this planet, he has about 1,500 BEUs of investiture, and the spread that he's with says that this is just under 8% skip capacity. So I paused my audiobook, and I got out my calculator, and because Brandon likes to have nice even thresholds for things, I decided that skip capacity was 20,000 breaths. And I turned out to be right later because he specifically mentions that, but 20,000 breaths is a ton of breaths. Nobody on Nalthis is that highly invested, except for the God King, who has 50,000. 20,000 breaths is the 9th heightening, which is what Vasher and Shashara were when they made Nightblood. Holy investiture, Batman. That is a lot that you need to get off-world. The first time that he mentioned that he couldn't even, shoulder check somebody, I was like, he's got the same thing as Hoid. He can't hurt people. Why does he have the same thing as Hoid where he can't hurt people? Turns out he held the same Dawnshard that Hoid did, and it imprinted that thing on him where you can't do violence against other people. I was like, oh, so many fangirl moments in this book. And yes, I'm wiggling in my chair, and that's why it's moving around in the background. But as disappointed as I was in Yumi, I'm equally excited for the Sunlit Man. And no, I didn't get any more answers to my questions in the Sunlit Man than I did in Yumi. But for some reason, the format of it just worked better for me. So back to something that I did say in my Yumi video. When somebody is referred to as being returned level invested, no, Elantrian level invested, we know that the returned have an equivalent investiture of about 2,000 breaths. That is the number of breaths that you need to reach the 5th heightening. And the returned do not actually have 2,000 breaths. They have one divine breath, which is a splinter of endowment, or something that we would call a spren or a sion or skaze on another world, where endowment has broken off a piece of herself and blessed one of the returned. Stuff is going on in Yumi. She's more invested than a returned. She's got more investiture than that. We know that people like Hoid and Nomad can be even more highly invested than that by things like Stormlight, or by absorbing other investiture. And investiture can be stored by a ferrochemist. How they do that? Don't know, because we haven't seen that yet. I'm super excited to see that. I hope that's coming in Mistborn Era 3, which is happening after Stormlight 5. There are so many books that I am so excited for, you guys. So many. Yeah, I've abandoned all hope that this is going to be less scattered than my Yumi video, but my editing skills have gotten better, so I hope that by the end of it I put it in some sort of reasonable order, and who am I kidding? The only people watching this are probably people who know me, and you are already used to the way that I rant about books. The cities fly. There's a power source that is investiture-based, and he calls this out pretty early because it would be completely impractical to be powering a flying city with coal. It would weigh too much, and the power output is just not there. So the engines have something to do with their investiture. And he points out that he has seen a flying city on a world near his homeworld. And I don't know if he has been to Ashen. I don't know if he has been to Braze. I don't know if he is talking about another world that is near the greater Rosharan system. I just know that he's seen a flying city. Nomad is from Roshar, by the way. That's also established pretty early. It's Sigel. I already said we were doing spoilers. It's Sigel. Sigel is the main character of the Sunlit Man. Sigel from Bridge 4. When he is dealing with the guy who set himself up as king of this world, the first thing that he mentions is that his eyes are a deep glowing red, and I paused and I was like, wait, that's the color of corrupted investiture. And then I played it again, and he goes, not like the color of corrupted investiture. I'm like, okay. Thank you for clearing that up for all of us super fans who were thinking that as soon as it was mentioned. Threnodites show up, like a splinter faction from Threnody, just bailed on that planet and came to this one. That's a thing that happens. There's a theme of shadows going on, and I thought that Sesnathith Tor was possibly a reference to Sessa Malix Dar, because Sigel points out that it sounds similar to something he's heard before, and that's where my brain went, but I messed it up because Ral Elarim is the city of shadows and not Sessa Malix Dar. That was my bad. The Night Brigade, once again calling on shadows. The Night Brigade are the ones that are chasing Sigel, because he held this Dawn Shard, and because he's connected to other people who held this Dawn Shard, and people are either trying to get to him to get the Dawn Shard, or they're trying to get to him to get to the person that currently has it, and Hoid is part of this chain. And we have an aspect of him show up and have kind of a cheeky little conversation with Sigel. The Charred, with their sun hearts embedded in their bodies and like having gouged out part of their flesh, reminds me immensely of Amaram in the Battle of Thalen Field in Oathbringer, and I don't know if there's a parallel there or not, but that's just what it made me think of. Investiture is kind of a hard topic to untangle, because not only is it what powers the magic systems on all of the worlds, it comes from each one of the shards, and it's also the same as what makes up someone's soul. And again, you can have ferochemists that can store investiture in a Nicrosil metal mind, Nicrosil mind, I guess, copper mind, steel mind, tin mind. Space travel has made movement between worlds easier than traveling through the cognitive realm, because there's a lot of things that can happen to you in the cognitive realm when you're trying to get on and off planet through Shadesmar if you don't have a stable perpendicularity. Like on Threnody, they just kind of move around. You never know exactly where one is going to be. You have them in really inaccessible locations like the Horneater Peaks on Roshar. You have Dalinar who can make perpendicularities, but you have to have him unify all of the planes so that you can actually have a perpendicularity. On Cell, because the Aeon Door is trapped in the cognitive realm, you've just got a massive amount of power that's bursting at the seams, and it's really dangerous to try and get on and off world in the cognitive realm on Cell. Pretty much the only world that you could pretty easily get on and off world is Scadrial, and that's probably why they took the lead in the space race. And it's referenced that there is in fact a space race going on amongst the shard worlds, and the Scadrians are winning. And they're trying to keep their edge by going around and doing research on other worlds, and that's why they're here on Canticle, trying to do more research into the sun and the investiture that comes from the sun on this planet. Something that I found interesting is they have a steel mind that is running calculations, and I'm just sitting here, I'm like, but why a steel mind? Why speed? Like, is that how you're making your ship go zoom zoom? You're using a metal mind that stores up speed? Like, because you have the medallions that show up in Mistborn Era 2, where you have to divest yourself of identity, and then they can be used by basically anybody. You can fill them with weight or speed or whatever. Is that what's going on here? I don't know. But spacefaring has become a feature of the Cosmere. It has existed in all three of the Cosmere secret projects, lest we forget the Sorceress taking off in a spaceship from Tress, and then Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, people launching from Kamashi to the next world. Oh, I completely forgot that the Shodel show up at the end of the Sunlit Man, and those were the weird-looking pale people that were on the moon in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. They were just a throwaway line. And they're from Yolen, and there's a throwaway comment in here. It's like, I didn't know any pockets of them existed outside Yolen. Like, what, can we get more information about these, please? I I need to know more about Yolen and what happened pre-shattering, because my curiosity is just too much and I can't contain myself. Right, space travel, industrialization. Aluminum is really hard to come by in pre-industrial societies, and this is part of what made Brandon use it to block investiture and the effects of investiture. It is the metal that can burn away all of the other metals in a Mistborn stomach. It is the metal that can block span reeds from working. Literal aluminum foil hats will block emotional allomancy, which is a world-building detail that I find endlessly delightful and will never get tired of. It always succeeds in making me laugh. But once you get to an industrial society, aluminum is almost trivially easy to get. So you have this sort of dichotomy between magic and science, and when magic is being used as a science, and when you have technological advancements that can negate your magic, what do you do then? And all of this is an idea that I am so excited to see explored in later Cosmere books. One of the ships is named Dawn Chaser, which I particularly love because Sigel landed on this planet running from the Night Brigade, and he's always having to stay in the shadows because the sunlight is literally deadly on this planet, and he was bearing a Dawn Shard, and this is why the Night Brigade is chasing him, so it all just kind of wraps full circle into a nice little bit of world building. I had a little bit of confusion over what a Dawn Shard was. Like, one of the notes that I made was, what is a Dawn Shard? Is it what Nightblood was based on? The Dawn Shards shattered ad nauseam. So, no, Nightblood was not based on the Dawn Shards. Nightblood was based on the Shard Blades that Shashara and Vasher saw when they traveled to Roshar before going back to Nalthis, and Awakening's a piece of steel. Something I forgot to mention is it's not just a steel mind that the Space Age Scadrians have in their ship. It is an awakened steel mind. And that's a throwaway line too, and I swear that that was done specifically for all of us super nerds that are just like, okay, so in order to awaken steel, you need to have the power of the ninth heightening. 20,000 breaths is the ninth heightening, which is what Vasher and Shashara were when they made Nightblood, which also they just seem to have hanging out in a jar on the counter. They just got a jar full of door. That was some weird phrasing. I cannot express what my brain did when I heard that, because I was just like, you need so much power to do that. Why would you awaken a steel mind? Why not a copper mind, so that you just functionally had an AI with all of the knowledge that you needed it to have? Who had enough investiture to do that? Furthermore, Vasher killed his wife over the knowledge of awakening steel. This is what led to the whole many-war. Who awakened a steel mind? Can you use the door for awakening? We know that you can use the door for light weaving, because you're not going to convince me that when Raoden went and had his little fencing bout with Serene and had an illusion over his face, that was not light weaving. You will not convince me that was not light weaving. So we know that the door can be used to at least mimic other things that you can do in the Cosmere, and I think that has something to do with it is just raw investiture. It is the soul stuff of two shards that were murdered by Odium, trapped in the cognitive realm, and you have some people who have a connection to this power that can use it and shape it in incredibly powerful ways. And this is why Hoid was trying to become an Elantrian for the entirety of Tress of the Emerald Sea, and ultimately succeeded. So can you use the door to awaken? Is that why they have the jar full of it sitting on the counter next to their awakened steel mind? I loved this book so much because it was just a bunch of those like, oh, by the way, there's an awakened steel mind. Oh, by the way, it takes 20,000 breaths to skip to a different planet. Oh, by the way, Sigel's a skybreaker now. What? And he's that old, jaded character that I'm just like, do you need a hug? I think you need a hug, because you've been through some shit, my dude. All of the things that auxiliary is referred to in this book: a spren, a radiant, a spirit, a hero, and a knight. It is expressly stated, he became a knight radiant and spoke the words and never betrayed his oaths. So if he's a spirit, that kind of calls back to Yumi and the souls of everyone on the planet that were sort of feeling everything that was going on. If he's a spren, then He's specifically referred to as being a high spren, but then why would he also be referred to as being a Knight Radiant? He has an accent. The accent that Auxiliary has kind of sounds like the one that Michael Kramer uses when he's doing Szeth's POVs. Okay, apparently, according to Brandon, you can bond a Threnodite Shade, similar to the way that you can bond a Radiant Spren, so I guess it's possible that there's a Knight Radiant who became a Cognitive Shadow that Sigel bonded. Szeth makes the most logical sense, because Szeth is a hardcore Skybreaker. Like, you want the epitome of lawful neutral Skybreakers. And he's the only one I could think of that would have said the words, never betrayed his oaths, and then something happened, and he would have formed this other bond. And we're going to get Szeth's backstory in Stormlight 5. There's going to be some sort of big battle in Stormlight 5. I think it's Szeth. I could be completely wrong, but I think it's Szeth. I am well aware that a lot of what I said in this video belongs with that It's Always Sunny meme. There wasn't anything I disliked about this book. I was left with questions, but they weren't the frustrating kind of questions that I was left with after Yumi. They're very similar, but they're not the same. These at least sort of follow rules and patterns that have been established already, because Sanderson's laws of magic, your ability to solve problems with the magic system, is directly proportional to how well your readers understand your magic system. Don't get me wrong. A lot happened. A lot was thrown at us. The top things that I am looking for answers to: what was Auxiliary when Sigel bonded him? What are the Space Age Scadrians up to, just overall, in general? What is happening in the future of the Cosmere when space travel is a relatively common thing? What happened on Yolen? The diaspora from Yolen. The Dawnshards, as Rysn picked up a Dawnshard in Dawnshard, the novella. We know that Hoid/Sigel have held this Dawnshard, and we know they were used to kill God. And everything else in the Cosmere has been the fallout of Ada Nauseam being shattered. I'm really, really hoping Stormlight 5 and beyond are going to be the books where we start getting some of these answers that I have these questions about. I have been a woman yelling at Cloud for I don't know how many minutes now, and until next time, stay spicy.